Many films withstand the test of time and even improve like fine wine, while others are not so fortunate. Regardless of quality, commercial success, or origin, some contain stories, characters, or ideas that today would be seen as controversial and offensive. Proposals that would be canceled without hesitation due to the shifting tides of the times. Today we're going to review 10 films that, although we all love them, unfortunately could not be made in the present day. These videos have been made possible thanks to our courses in screenwriting, directing, and cinematography. Stay until the end of the video for a very special discount. Number 13, The Last Tango in Paris. The Last Tango in Paris is another film that pushed the envelope in its time and continues to be discussed for its contentious approach to intimacy on screen. Starring Marlon Brando and Maria Schneider, the film was celebrated for its raw and unfiltered exploration of human desire and vulnerability. However, behind the scenes, the way certain scenes were filmed has raised concerns about consent and the treatment of actors. In today's climate, where there is a much stronger emphasis on clear boundaries and respectful collaboration in all aspects of filmmaking, the methods used during production would likely be scrutinized heavily. The film remains a subject of debate, admired by some for its artistic ambition, while others consider it a reminder of how standards of respect and ethical practices in cinema have evolved. Number 12, Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange is a film that still sparks conversation decades after its release. Directed by Stanley Kubrick, this dystopian drama presents a future where violence and free will collide in a way that is both stylish and deeply unsettling. The movie follows Alex and his gang as they commit acts that are shocking in their brutality, and then it takes a twist when the state steps in with experimental behavioral treatments. While many admire its artistic merit and bold exploration of themes like control and morality, the film's explicit scenes of aggression and controversial portrayal of sexual violence are aspects that would likely be met with even harsher criticism today. Modern audiences and regulators might find the graphic content and the way it challenges ethical boundaries too provocative for mainstream acceptance. Number 11, Back to the Future. There is one subject that is the very definition of taboo: incest. It was always uncommon, even in independent productions. So much so that during the 80s, it was surprising to see it hold narrative importance in a blockbuster like Back to the Future. When Marty McFly accidentally travels to 1955, he interrupts the exact moment when the young people who will become his parents begin to fall in love. But then something happens, making matters even worse. Lorraine, his future mother, falls in love with him. In fact, before entering the graduation dance, she kisses him and realizes there is something strange. She says it was like kissing her own brother. This unusual aspect of the film was in the script from the very start, written by director Robert Zemeckis along with Bob Gale, as they were looking for a Hollywood studio to finance the project. Disney rejected it specifically because of this detail. Universal didn't have as many issues, but can you imagine what would happen today if a film of the caliber of Marvel or Pixar featured a similar scene? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 10, Tie Me Up, 1989. Today, Pedro Almodóvar is celebrated as a renowned filmmaker for Spanish culture and cinema in general. But in his early days, he was basically a cinematic punk, bold and politically incorrect. During the 80s, this audacity made him the flag bearer of La Movida Madrileña, and it was precisely during that time that he created one of his most cancelable proposals, Tie Me Up, 1989. In it, Antonio Banderas plays Ricky, an unbalanced man who kidnaps Marina, an adult film star with whom he once had a relationship. He ties her to a bed and tries to convince her that they are in love, and she ends up falling for him. The very premise would make any producer extremely nervous today and spark a flood of tears on social media. It proposes an unusual story of love and desire born out of violence, not to mention some scenes, like one where Ricky and Marina let themselves be swept away by lust, that were filmed with such intensity that many thought the actors were really intimate. Victoria Abril, who plays Marina, admitted that today the film couldn't be shot because she believes we are no longer free to say what we want. Number 9. Manhattan. Age gap relationships have never been free of controversy, especially when a mature person is paired with someone much younger. The big screen has given us numerous cases, though none as discussed as the one Woody Allen portrayed in the romantic comedy Manhattan. In it, Allen plays Isaac Davis, a middle-aged screenwriter who falls in love with his best friend's wife while maintaining a sentimental relationship with Tracy, a 17-year-old girl. The bond between Isaac and Tracy did not spark debates at the time, but over the decades and changing mindsets, it certainly has. Moreover, some details from the filming have proven even more controversial. Tracy was played by Mariel Hemingway, who, during filming, was only 16 years old, as she later revealed in her autobiography, Out Came the Sun. Allen even tried to seduce her, even wanting to take her on a trip to Paris. Allen went on to show age gap relationships in other films, and he himself experienced 2 such situations in real life, both amidst scandals. Beyond the fact that Manhattan is still considered a prestigious film, do you think a film like this could be made today? Number 8. 16 Candles. Student comedies are a guarantee for excess, and while many of us laugh at their extravagant stories, most had scenes that perfectly fall into the category of crimes. We can name films like Animal High, Porky's, and Revenge of the Nerds, but let's focus on 16 Candles, one of John Hughes' undeniable masterpieces. The protagonist, Samantha Baker, is a young girl celebrating her 16th birthday who is infatuated with Jake, the most attractive and popular guy, but she is also desired by Ted, a younger geek. Although the film was very popular, it has come under scrutiny over the years. For starters, it was criticized for its homophobic slurs and xenophobia. There's a scene with an exchange student portrayed with every possible stereotype. Additionally, the way some characters mock Samantha's lack of prominent breasts has aged poorly. But there's an even more delicate aspect. In one sequence, Caroline, Jake's girlfriend, passes out after drinking too much. Jake asks Ted to drive her home, implicitly giving him carte blanche with her, as she is so intoxicated she wouldn't notice. 16 Candles was inspired by essays on how abuse is normalized in some productions. Molly Ringwald, who played Samantha, later said that those were different times, though she now opposes many of the things seen on screen. Number 7. Ace Ventura Pet Detective. Nowadays, we have more information about the LGBT world and trans identity, but in the 80s and 90s, it was something new and many people neither accepted nor understood it. Back then, a trans person was used mainly as a gag or comic relief. We can see examples in films like The Naked Gun or Sage, but no episode was as extreme as in Ace Ventura Pet Detective. Jim Carrey portrays the extravagant titular character whose mission is to rescue Snowflake, the Miami Dolphins' pet dolphin. During the investigation, he becomes involved with Lois Einhorn, a policewoman, and they share a passionate kiss. But everything changes when he deduces that she is actually Ray Finkel, the possible kidnapper of the animal. Ace is disturbed, vomits uncontrollably, brushes his teeth, burns his clothes, and cries in the shower. The sequence is set to The Crying Game by Boy George from the film of the same name, which notably features a trans character. Later, the detective forces Einhorn to reveal her true identity, causing other officers to be nauseated. These scenes caused laughter when the film hit theaters, but today they are considered the crudest example of transphobia. The controversy it generated is even featured in the 2020 documentary Disclosure, which examines the representation of the trans community in pop culture. Regarding Ace Ventura, its creator admitted that he always knew the film would generate both love and hate, a great comedy without a doubt, but with a narrative twist unthinkable today. Number 6. Pink Flamingos. There are millions of films today that could not be made, but some directors simply couldn't film their projects in this era. There's no better example than John Waters. All his films are atomic bombs against good taste, but his crowning achievement of excess will always be Pink Flamingos. We've already dedicated a video to it. Let's stop to consider the aspects that would make it cancelable. In reality, the film has been controversial since its premise. two clans competing to see which one is the filthiest. Without a trace of guilt, Waters unleashes an endless array of scatological situations and dark humor of every kind. But the most controversial moment comes at the end. The self-proclaimed drag matriarch of the family protagonist eats excrement that has just been defecated by a dog. A scene filmed in one continuous shot, without cuts, to avoid any cinematic tricks. Waters hasn't been making films for years now, but he writes books and offers masterclasses around the world. He never ceases to stress how important experimentation and bad taste are for artistic expression, and he always speaks out against cancel culture. Considered one of the icons of progressive culture in the 70s and 80s, he once said that today's censors are rich, young, and progressive folks who are against the freedom of expression for which he once fought. Cannibal Holocaust. Great horror films are necessarily disturbing to work, but sometimes some go too far. Even during filming, the Italian production Cannibal Holocaust crossed unthinkable boundaries and was poorly received from the start. Although we've already dedicated a video to it, let's revisit one of its most infamous aspects. One of the reasons it couldn't be made today, and frankly, not even back then. The story is disturbing in itself. A group of documentarians ventures into a Colombian jungle known as Green Hell and encounters the Yakimo, a tribe of cannibals. Unable to capture any interesting footage, the filmmakers themselves commit violent acts against the natives. Naturally, the savages' response is swift. After 4 weeks in theaters, Cannibal Holocaust was pulled from cinemas and confiscated by a Milanese court. Additionally, the film was embargoed for 3 years. The violence among humans gives us images not for the faint-hearted, even though we know all of it is faked, which saved director Ruggero Deodato when the justice system accused him of having actually killed the actors. Yet at other moments in the film, animal killings were real. A spider, a rat, a muskrat, a giant turtle, a monkey, a snake, and a pig all died. Deodato received a sentence of 4 months in jail with probation and had to pay fines. Later, he complained that activists attacked the cinema and not the slaughterhouses. Still, he later expressed regret over those scenes and said he loved animals. Number 4, Tropic Thunder. Whether as an actor or director, Ben Stiller has never been afraid to tackle comedy with elements or themes that could affect certain sectors of society. And indeed, while his films today might still be made despite cancellations, there's one that would be extremely difficult to film because of a theme that, once mentioned, will spark immediate images in everyone's mind. I'm talking about Tropic Thunder. 3 Hollywood stars star in a film about Vietnam, and although they end up involved in a real military conflict, one of these absent-minded stars is Kirk Lazarus, an Australian who undergoes a skin pigmentation procedure to play a black soldier. This character serves as a satire of method actors, yet from the start there were voices expressing their discontent. Robert Downey Jr., who played Lazarus, did not shy away from the subject in an interview, saying he could understand the audience's disgust, yet he defended his performance. He clarified that it was never his intention to offend the African-American community and insisted that the film was actually meant to criticize and expose the stupidity of blackface in cinema. Although Downey Jr.'s explanation was sincere, I doubt anyone today would dare to portray a similar character. Number 3, Taxi Driver. Films featuring minors in adult situations are a surefire recipe for controversy. Many of us remember Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver, where at the age of 12 she played a teenage prostitute. In fact, Martin Scorsese's masterpiece is so rich in detail that we always end up mentioning it in our videos. That's why now we're going to look at another film with an even murkier case, Pretty Baby. Set in 1917, the film centers on Violet, a 12-year-old girl living in a brothel. Her mother is one of the prostitutes, and eventually the young girl is led down that same path. Controversy was present from production. The role of Violet was originally offered to Jodie Foster, who turned it down, leaving it in the hands of Brooke Shields, who was the same age as the character. That did not stop director Louis Malle from showing her scantily clad and even making her kiss her co-star, 29-year-old Keith Carradine. Although Pretty Baby won major awards, it continues to fuel discussions, especially now that another film featuring a young girl in such bold scenes has been released. Shields managed to continue her career in Hollywood, but the experience left its mark, as revealed in the aptly titled documentary Pretty Baby Number 2, The Life of Brian, 1979. And finally, there is one film that has managed to be canceled in every era for every possible reason, spanning the entire political and moral spectrum. That film is The Life of Brian, 1979, by the English comedy group Monty Python. It is a satire of Christianity centered on an ordinary man who is mistaken for Jesus and treated as such. Upon its release, accusations of blasphemy were hurled at it by religious groups, but those criticisms faded over time as the church became less of a target. However, today it would be at the center of a new controversy. In 2023, a stage adaptation of The Life of Brian was being prepared, and everything seemed like a guaranteed success until the actors refused to perform a specific scene from the film. This scene shows the moment when Stan, one of the characters, announces that he wants to be a woman and have children because it's his right as a man, and he then calls himself Loretta. Another man mocks him, to which Stan, or rather Loretta, tells him not to oppress her. John Cleese, one of the Pythons, acknowledged that the cast advised removing the scene, finding it outdated and potentially offensive. Cleese admitted that the scene had not aged well, but he insisted he would in no way remove that part. The Life of Brian confirms that a film, no matter how daring, always finds a way to be canceled, regardless of the era or the group it offends. When we watch a movie, it's natural to feel connected to the characters, at least in some of their traits. That's how a phenomenon known as "I'm that" or simply "me" was born on the internet, terms we use to indicate when we resonate with archetypes of all kinds at different moments in our lives. Number 1. Natural-born killers. Natural-Born Killers is a film that dives headfirst into the chaotic and unsettling world of sensationalized violence. Directed by Oliver Stone, the movie tells the story of a couple caught in a whirlwind of crime and media frenzy, pushing the boundaries of how violence is depicted on screen. Its frenetic editing and hyper-stylized storytelling were meant to serve as a commentary on the media's obsession with sensationalism and the way it can sometimes glamorize destructive behavior. Although it was intended as a satirical look at society's fixation on violence, the film's relentless barrage of intense scenes could be viewed as too extreme by today's standards. With current debates surrounding media influence and social responsibility, it's easy to see why such a portrayal might lead to calls for stricter controls or even censorship.